Hey there, everybody. I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Thanks for joining us for this month's TCM Spotlight. Each Tuesday in prime time, we'll have films inspired by Mark Harris's book, Five Came Back. Mark is an author and film historian. He'll be our guest every Tuesday during prime time this month. Mark, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Tonight, our focus is on Frank Capra, and up next, the first of his Why We Fight documentaries, Prelude to War. So, Mark, what was the Why We Fight series? How many did Capra make?
Capra made 7 Why We Fight films, and this was really his first assignment upon accepting an officer's commission and leaving Hollywood and going to Washington. He sat down with General George Marshall, whose idea it was to bring filmmakers into the war effort, and Marshall told him that they desperately needed something to replace a series of really antiquated lectures and movies made almost before the sound era to tell incoming enlistees and draftees what the war was about. The interesting thing is, Marshall didn't tell Capra what the specific message should be. He just said, our boys need educating. And there was almost no money, there was almost no staff, but Capra really quickly recruited a bunch of Hollywood screenwriters and got them to come and draft a kind of 7-part history of Japanese and German and Italian aggression in the previous decade.
Previously, as you mentioned, Army officers, military officers would give lectures to incoming enlisted men, and by the accounts in your book, these guys were falling asleep during the lectures, there were catcalls, they were terrible.
Right. We have to remember the draftees were very, very young. We were looking at 18 and 19-year-olds who weren't inundated with information about what was going on in the world. And conversely, because they were young, they had also grown up on a set of movies that were way more sophisticated than these things that the Army had made 12 or 15 years ago. And Capra had the idea to use some very modern techniques, unusual for a documentary, including animation for the very first time, to help convey the purposes of this war and the background to it to these young guys.
Now, there's a word that we're going to use a lot all month that is, you know, it's frowned upon. It seems like a dirty word. The word is propaganda, because we look at those films that the Nazis produced, and you know, and they're hideous and they're incredibly manipulative. But you could see also at times why they're so effective. And Capra saw that, and he recognized it. He saw Triumph of the Will, right?
Right. He went to New York and saw Triumph of the Will, a copy that had been seized and held at the Museum of Modern Art. And he came out of that movie, and his first reaction was, we're going to lose. He was that impressed by Leni Riefenstahl's ability to convey something through propaganda. And then he had the kind of brilliant necessity is the mother of invention idea of using this propaganda in the Why We Fight films to show how the enemy thought. Capra really needed to do this because he had no money to shoot original material himself for these movies. So what he realized was, by using all of this enemy propaganda footage from Italy, from Japan, from Germany that had been seized, he could get young American soldiers inside enemy thinking.
All right, Mark, thanks. Let's take a look at it. From director Frank Capra in 1942, Why We Fight, Prelude to War.